Okay, welcome everybody to From the Sideline. I'm here with three of my other co-hosts, and one is probably coming along the way. My name is Monique. I'll be your host from the Sidelines. Oh, speaking of which, I think he just popped up. Let me just add him real quick. Hello, Jackson. I will start by introducing Jackson first, and then right next to him is Josh, above him is CJ, and then Cody, as you guys know. And we today are going to be talking about something real special. We are recapping the 2025 NFL draft that took place a few days ago in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So, guys, we already talked about this. There is one topic we are going to save for the second half of the show. But overall, what we're going to talk about are the winners and losers of ours that we think are from the draft, whether it's players or teams or both. We're going to recap both of them. So before we get started on that, I'm going to go to Jackson first since he's like the 1 minute newcomer to the show. What do you think of the overall draft? Did you think there was a lot of drama there? Was there enough to entice you? What did you think overall?
I wasn't super excited going into this draft. It felt like there weren't enough storylines to start off. And so I was pleasantly surprised with how it turned out. Obviously, there's a major storyline that we'll talk about later. But even the smaller ones, too. I'm typically pessimistic about the draft when it comes to the Panthers. They don't tend to draft very well, and I feel like they did a good job. So that was good to hear. It seems like a lot of the teams that historically have not drafted super well did a fairly good job, and a lot of them have fairly new GMs as well. So I think we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing some aggressive young GMs with some trades and stuff like that. And so that made it a lot more exciting as the product was really not all that marketable going into the draft until, everything started to pan out how it did.
Totally agree. Josh, what do you think about the overall draft?
Yeah, kind of pick it up with Jackson. You didn't see too many storylines going into it besides like the obvious one. Let's be honest, kind of got burnt down off a little bit, but at the same time you're intrigued as well. But during the draft, you kind of got little nuggets of surprises here and there, like they chose them. Oh, this team traded up. Oh, this team traded back, and why didn't all the mock drafts are saying this player's gonna get picked? Actually, completely went past them and reached for this one. And teams that don't normally draft a certain player turn out to draft that player in quite some time, which is I keep people on the toes, which I appreciated as the draft went on. The more entertaining I got.
For sure. CJ, what are your overall thoughts about this draft?
Oh, where to start? Um, I thought this draft. Again, the draft is the greatest day of the year for me. I love all 3 days. I'm one of those sickos that sit in front of my TV watching from pick 1 to pick 257 by the Patriots. So it was a fun experience because like I do a lot of research. I kind of dive deep into a lot of prospects. I'm like super into it, right? So obviously seeing like certain players I like go into situations I think that fit really well, and then seeing guys that I want personally for my team, the Commanders, but we don't get them. We only have 5 picks, so you can't get everybody that you want. Obviously, there's only you know 53 spots that you can have, but overall, I think the draft was fine. I think the excitement going in was palpable because of the fact that we didn't really know what was going to happen. And then when we got that day one trade with the Jags and the Browns, it just said, okay, like here comes the chaos. And we only had 2 trades in the first round. I think we wound up with about close to 25 trades, I want to say, throughout the entirety of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
But you always want to see those big blockbuster trades early on, and we did get that a little taste. I wanted a little bit more chaos with me being a sicko, but all in all, I enjoyed the draft.
And last but not least, Cody, what did you think of the draft?
So yeah, I'm with CJ. I'm a draft sicko as well. This is one of my favorite days of the year as well. 3 days of the year. But yeah, just like what Josh and Jackson were saying, the lead up to this draft wasn't exactly exciting. I think it was like the first draft in the last 5 years. They didn't have a pre-trade going into the draft in the first round. So there wasn't a lot of excitement, and quarterbacks were kind of low key and things like that. But then, yeah, as it turned out, it was a really dramatic couple of days, some crazy trades, some crazy moves arounds as well. But yeah, um, overall, looking at the draft, I think there's a lot of good players. I don't know if there's a lot of stars in this draft,
Mhm.
but I think there's a lot of guys that will start for a long time for their teams, which is really all you can ask for out of a draft.
It's funny because I told you guys the first day of the draft at like 8 p.m. Eastern, I was like, "Oh God, I have to train. I can't like be in front of my computer or be in front of my TV and look at like who's actually like picked first, how many." So I was relying on you guys, and all I see is like messages of like, "I can't believe this person went there and this team traded up." Like there was a lot of like more chaos than I thought was gonna happen. But we're gonna talk about the winners and losers and recap the NFL draft right now. I'm gonna start first because I want Cody to chime in on this, and Cody knows exactly what I'm talking about. My winner of the NFL draft is none other than my team and Cody's team, the New England Patriots, and who they drafted. So I want to go over to Cody first because like he is like that draft nut just like CJ is. What do you think of all the drafts, at least from maybe rounds 1 to 3? Let's just say, what do you think of
Okay.
the choices, and do you think that it's viable for us to move forward in this season?
Yeah, I really loved everything that the Patriots did, especially in the first 3 rounds, but they got some good value in the 5th round too with some players as well. But Will Campbell, like we talked about with CJ a little before we got in the show, was probably the safest pick at 4. I was kind of hoping Abdul Carter fell to 4, but that didn't happen. But Will Campbell, that was the biggest need for the Patriots, was left tackle. You fill that
Yep.
need. Yeah, the short arms is kind of a discussion, but he played every single snap, or he played every single game since his freshman year at LSU, first team all
Mhm.
SEC twice. So that's got to speak for something a little bit as well. So really good pick there. And then the fact they got Trevion Henderson, I thought was a really good pick in the 2nd round. I think he's the most explosive running back in this
Mhm.
draft. Definitely he gets the ball in his hand. He gets an opening. He's gone pretty much. So I really love that pick. And then Kyle Williams was a little bit underrated, wide receiver from Washington State, but he's another guy that could just burn it too. He could take the top off of defenses. So really good picks there. And then, yeah, kind of the cherry on top in the first 3 rounds was getting
Mhm.
that #1 center in the draft, Wilson, at the
Yep.
end of the 3rd round. So I liked what they did. Usually with the Patriots draft, at least at the end of the Belichick era, it was like, okay, they're probably going to trade back. They're going to take somebody I've never heard of or something like that. So it was different this year. It was good to kind of see them stay with what they should be doing a little bit, taking the needs that they needed and then taking some good value picks at the end of the draft. So I thought they did a really good job. So I'm really excited for the season. They had a good free agency. They had a good draft. So I
Mhm.
think it's definitely going into the season looking pretty good.
Thinking the credit, and we talked about this before the show started, the credit, in my opinion, goes to Mike Bravel and it goes to the GM for the New
Yeah.
England Patriots for like just pretty much reversing the wheel and saying that we're gonna do things a little bit differently this year when it comes to the draft. So CJ, who are your winners for this year's draft?
Um, so obviously, I think you can always pencil in, or really you could put it in pen. It's the Baltimore Ravens. They're always going to be a team that just it's just like, how did we let this happen? And it happened twice this year, at least twice. They got some guys. I'm just like, this is not. Of course, they falls to the Ravens. Like having Malachi Starks, which is the perfect. I mocked Malachi Starks to the Ravens so many times that it's like this would just be what happened. Like, well, what happened for the Ravens, and it happened. And so I'm so sick about that. And then you double up by getting Mike Green in the 2nd round, and it's like I understand why some teams would completely take him off of their boards, but the Baltimore Ravens, I guess the cost, the risk evaluation of him was, I guess not as high as other teams. So that always makes me mad. But I think the biggest winner for me would be Amarian Hampton going to a sicko with the
Yes.
Harbaugh family because he's going to get his ass run through the roof because he's going to get all the carries that he can have. And it's going to be great. And he's going to have a long, illustrious career as long as they want to pay him on his rookie contract. So
For sure. Really good one. I was gonna mention, if someone wasn't gonna mention Omarion, like I thought like for some reason nobody was gonna mention him, I was gonna say that. So
You know
really,
your
really good
resident
for
Tar Heel is going to bring him up.
you know, you know,
True,
you
true.
know. And he was definitely talking about it from North Carolina, by the
How do
way, if
you
you guys
think
don't know. Yeah.
how do you think he's going to fit? How do you think they're going to use Najee Harris since they have him on the roster as well with both of those guys being such workhorses?
fullback.
It could happen.
I'm going to say something, and you don't have to agree. This is my personal opinion. Najee Harris stinks. Like he has a metal foot, right, from the plate that was in his foot, and he's been slow. And so the Steelers let him go and say, we're fine. And what the Steelers do, they got the same exact running back with Caleb Johnson from Iowa to replace, thinking they want to get a different flavor. Like, no, we like vanilla. Right. Vanilla is our flavor.
It's true. It's true.
So, but I just think Najee Harris, I don't know what it was, because Najee Harris was so good at Alabama, but then he just became slow, and I guess he gained too much weight to try to like comprehend for the amount of like the pounding he was going to get at the next level. But I think he overdid it. I'm not saying he's Eddie Lacy or anything like that, but it definitely has like, you know, stopped some of his like his ascent to be like an elite running back.
Yeah. Well, did you see the holes he was running through at Alabama? I mean, I think it's just one of those things. Alabama players don't always translate because they're just on stacked teams. So I think that's one of those things that kind of happened too. Although he's had production, somehow finds a way to get 1,000 yards almost every year.
Every year.
Yeah, I mean, 1,000 is not that hard to get. I mean, if you average 65 yards a game, you can get 1,000 yards by the end of the year.
True. Yeah, I think Marion Hampton will be the number one guy if he shows out in training camp.
Oh, he will. He is number one. For
sure. And Josh, who are your winners? Was it the Vikings this year? Let's see.
Check it. All right. I got a few things. I got one, I think on the radar is the 49ers. I think they're getting ready to punch teams back like they used to. I mean, they went defense heavy. In the first round, you got Malik Williams, you got Alfred Collins in the second round, and then you got Nick Martin, and then going another corner dude for Western Kentucky. They're like, we're getting back to our roots of punching the mouth and taking the football. So I'm like, respect, because the defense got weak and flimsy as the season went on. The past, I fear they would have went a little more offensive heavy to get replace Debo and to get some help from the tight end position too. But that didn't happen. But that's okay. So that's my kind of on the radar. On the Falcons pass rush, again, James Pierce and Jan Walker to get, they haven't had that, duo, that kind of pressure in a while. And then also got the Packers in 23 years. Hate this, pissed me off. Getting that Matthew Golden dude. That pissed me off so much. I'm like, going another year, I just not helping your quarterback out. I really wish that would have been a thing. And then Ohio State, drafting, getting their players drafted 14 times. This draft, I think, is pretty solid. It's one of my favorite college teams, so no big. And then, yes, of course, we only had 4 or 5 picks this year. I think the Vikings making a split decision to trade with the Seahawks to get Sam Howell. I think because I was wondering. We had no backup quarterback and whatnot. Why not go get another gunslinger who ain't afraid to take a chance? If McCarthy went down or that knee injury, God forbid, comes up and whatnot. And then, have good old Mr. Sanders, kind of sliding in the back end there.
Exactly. And we'll talk about him a little later. Jackson, who are your winners for this year's draft?
Yeah, Josh brought up a couple. I thought the Vikings trade for Sam Howell was a good one. He's a risk taker. He's a good quarterback. I mean, he led the league in passing yards for a significant portion of his season with the Commanders, and he turned the ball over a lot as well. But guys like that typically get second chances. They like excitement, they like offense, and so his role with the Vikings will be a supportive role for McCarthy, but he's a really good option to back him up. I think that you can't really show a lack of faith in McCarthy and not start him this year. Or else, why did you draft him with your, what was it, 5th pick? So
5th or 6th, yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Falcons as well. As a Panthers fan, I'm watching our division rivals pretty closely, and I wanted us to take, as a Panthers fan, to take Jalen Walker. And the fact that he continued to fall to 15 to the Falcons and they really bolstered their pass rush terrifies me, because Bryce Young already gets, abused in that division. With we don't even have a terrible O line. There's just a lot of good pass rushers in our division, and each of the teams continued to bolster that as well as add offensive weapons around their quarterbacks. But honestly, I've got the Panthers down as a winner. Now, I don't think that being a winner in this draft is going to change their contention or anything like that. They're probably still not going to make the playoffs, but they're going to be a significantly better team than they were last year. I think adding that weapon for Bryce was really kind of a slap in the face to a lot of Panthers fans at first. And it's kind of like that meme of that girl drinking the kombucha for the first time where she makes that wry face and then like kind of considers it again. Like all of the Panthers fans were like, ew, no, why do we draft a receiver? And then we watch his highlight film of him just mossing dudes and we're like, oh,
That's
like,
what
this could work, like Bryce needs a go up guy. So pairing him with Xavier Legette, with what I really like is that we still have our veteran and Adam Thielen to kind of coach those guys up and let them learn under a guy like him. Yep. Josh, you're hand-me-down veteran. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. And so I think that we've got an underrated receiving core. Drafted a tight end that I didn't necessarily think we needed, but I think a young, heavy tight end room could be really good for us. Obviously, good assurance for Bryce. And young quarterbacks love tight ends, so I think that they really did a good job in the draft. And a lot of the analysts have us with an A+ draft rating, which I haven't seen in an Instagram post related to the Panthers probably since Instagram was invented.
Right.
Very nice, guys. Love all the winners that you guys talked about. By the way, if you guys are joining us right now, this is From the Sideline. We are live from Sports Fluent's Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. And now we're going to get on to the bad side of this draft, the losers that we think were happening between the teams and the players, both. If you guys want to talk about both, that's fine. I'm going to start with Jackson first. Who did you think, in terms of teams or players, was considered a loser in your eyes in this year's draft?
So year by year, it's usually a little bit clearer. Like there's usually one or two teams that we leave the draft, and even their fan base leaves the draft, and they're like, "What were they doing?" Like they had needs they didn't assess. They drafted a player way too high. Was it the Raiders like 2 years ago that drafted? There was two guys with the same
Clinton
name.
Farrell.
Clelin Ferrell, yeah.
Yeah, they drafted the same guy, but like the same name, but different guy, like 2 rounds too early.
No, I know
You know
you're
what I'm
talking
talking
about. It's the
CJ's having a revelation right now.
one went to Alabama.
And one went to Tennessee.
Yeah, and yeah. I know you're talking about. And then they got the one who's like absolutely garbage.
Yeah, they took the Alabama one who like was not even mocked to get drafted.
Yeah.
He was like a 7th round projection, and they picked him in like the 4th round.
Yeah, it's that meme where he's just like,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, little Sasquatch sitting there, and he's like,
was it Leatherwood? Alex Leatherwood? Was that who?
No, it wasn't Leatherwood.
No. Yeah.
It's like a little. I think it's like an edge. It was an edge.
2 edge rushers. They played the same position too. So I mean,
Wow.
tough call. You can see how someone could make that decision. However, I don't know that there's like a super clear loser in this draft. I don't have them as a loser. I just have them as I'm a little disappointed in their draft strategy, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that the holdout game with Rodgers is not a winning one. I don't really have a ton of confidence in waiting on a guy like Rodgers to come out of his like ayahuasca journey to decide that he's ready to come play football again. And so they waited until the 6th round to take Will Howard, who is an impressive quarterback. He just won a national championship. He's a great passer. I think he makes good decisions. I am not out on Will Howard. I think that under the right system, he can become a good quarterback. And Tomlin's not a terrible coach to produce someone like that. The problem is that a guy like Will Howard needs to sit behind a veteran and really learn to polish up the rest of his game. And they don't have a veteran on their roster. So I felt
Duck. Mason Rudolph. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Come on.
Talk about
Rudolph.
Duck Randolph.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that's quite the senior leadership they need.
You led
Barring,
them to the playoffs. Just saying. People
2 years
forget.
ago, yeah, that's true.
I would say that Mike Tomlin led that roster to the playoffs.
That's
You
probably
could even
true.
say that
Yeah.
TJ Watt led that team to the playoffs.
You mean the guy they're
It's
about to trade?
what's that?
You mean the guy they're about to trade?
Are they about to do that? Is this?
Nah, I'm trying to put it out there.
It's wishful thinking. Yeah,
think it's
There is
possible.
like some tea leaves though. There are
There
some
is,
tea leaves in a TJ Watt trade, especially with there's been some like disgruntled defenders, and there's people that are like pointing the finger towards TJ. And he also wants a new contract, and they just paid DK a ton of money, and they never pay guys they don't draft a ton of money. They always like to pay their own guys. So that could start building. I'm just going to give you here first. It's an early thing for training.
There are two edge rushers that are so dissatisfied with their team's quarterback's decisions, and both of those teams still showed no clear decision on what they're going to do, right?
Yep.
Because obviously Myles Garrett was going to leave the Browns, and they got him back by one, paying him truckloads of money,
Quarterback.
and two, saying we have a clear plan at quarterback. Was your clear plan to draft two quarterbacks, have Joe Flacco,
Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett.
Kenny
Yeah.
Pickett?
Yeah.
They have a 5-man rotation at quarterback right now that everyone's like quote tweeting is like the nightmare blunt rotation. You're just like
pretty much. Wow.
yeah, just like an absolute chaotic room, right? And then of course with the Steelers, like they wait till the 6th to draft Will Howard, and it's not really like we've heard anything since about like, they have some sort of something in writing or a handshake with Aaron Rodgers, who is not exactly the guy I don't even know if he's worth the holdup. He's getting older, and he did not do well in New York. So yeah, I would say that the Steelers, I'm a little bit disappointed with their strategy there. It doesn't just have to do with quarterback. I do like them drafting the running back out of Iowa. I think that they have a really good replacement rate at running back. But if they don't have enough identity as an offense, then a drafted running back can't make enough of a difference.
For sure. Okay, Josh, that was a good one. Jackson, you went like full throttle on the Steelers, which I really appreciate. Josh, who would you think was considered a loser in this year's draft for you?
All right, so let me piggyback off what Jack said with the whole Browns locker room. I don't know if y'all watch Bleacher Report when they do the little cartoon Gridiron Heights. I cannot watch when they dig into them on that one. That's gonna be entertaining. Otherwise, I agree with the Browns and the whole QB locker room carousel. That should be a fun one. God, I hope they have Hard Knocks on them. They probably won't, but if they do, I'm dead.
Oh,
they need to.
You
well,
have
actually,
to
they
have a
just
Hard
did
Knocks on it.
in-season with
Yeah.
them, though, huh? They did just do the in-season one.
They did, yeah. They can do it again. It's all good.
It might be another different version of Hard Knocks, but it might not be Hard Knocks specified. Netflix might have some sort of gig they're going on, like they're doing with the quarterbacks, receivers. Otherwise, another one I got is Justin Tucker being a loser since his tenure there, they finally drafted a kicker. So he's been put on kicker too. Yeah, he's been put on notice too. So that's one I got. So is one of the most legendary kickers of all time. Now he's on the hot seat. You would never think that, but there he is.
He's got some other things going on too, so that's why they needed some insurance at the kicker.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
And then I got Abdul Carter being a loser only because he was getting rejected on getting Lawrence Taylor's number.
How do you
I wouldn't even ask
feel
for
about retired numbers? Because I feel like I get it, right? You did something great. But when is it going to when do we meet the point to where it's like we have no more numbers to wear? You know what I'm saying? So like the Celtics, right? They have a billion freaking numbers freaking retired. So what are they just gonna be wearing, like 121, 123 after a while? Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, if you have that many great players, that's a good thing to have. But I feel like having so many retired numbers after a while, it's like, okay, like you have 50 retired. We only have 50 numbers and we have to field a team of 53. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, yeah, what is the jersey going to look like in 100, 200 years from now? I mean, you're going to go to 3-digit numbers, like just to, keep trying to open up more spots. Which is going to be pretty wild. You're going to run a room of the stadiums and banners. You're going to be drenched in the walls and whatnot. I mean,
Right.
we should see, though. I mean, it's a good point, man. Otherwise, the other loser is me. Because I was really hoping for Nick and Manwuri. I was hyping everybody around it, like, watch, get up, I'm gonna call it, guys. Shut up. Guard. I mean, it's the last piece we need for the offensive line, but man, that splash, sexy pick. I was really hoping for him, but I'm going to, of course, the Seahawks. Trying to make it Legion of Boom 2.0, maybe a little Cam Chancellor, replacement. They haven't had that excitement for a while. Hate that, but it is what it is. So I'm the other loser.
CJ, you are up for the losers this year. What are your picks?
So I have 3 interesting things I want to talk about. I'll try to make it super quick. First, Judkins thinking he's going to be the lead back because then Dylan Sampson's coming right back after him because the Browns have been double dipping on every position. But I don't mind that because I love the Judkins fit for the Browns, and I really like Dylan Sampson. So I think there will be a good 1-2, but it does diminish his fantasy value just a tad bit. So losing his fantasy value there. And how about being a wide receiver in Tampa Bay? Because out of all the picks that I did not expect in the first round, I did not expect Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State to get drafted to the Buccaneers after they just spent a bunch of money on Mike Evans and Godwin. Understandably so, I do get that Godwin's coming off a pretty gruesome injury and Mike Evans is getting older. Both are getting older. So I think they got 2 receivers in this draft, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of a little like, okay, especially with your first round draft pick where you had Jaheed Campbell would have been so perfect in Todd Bowles' system. But, I guess receiver, and then they like McMillan a lot, Jalen McMillan last year. You becoming Baker's best friend. So maybe, I don't know. That was kind of an interesting thing there for their targets losing for a lot of the receivers. And hopefully, Baker can have another 4,000-yard season. So maybe there might be enough ball for everybody.
It's a lot of mouths to feed.
It is.
Mouths to feed for sure. There's got to be a trade coming soon, I'm guessing, with one of those guys. But
I don't know. But they do have a new coordinator. So it's like, are they going to try to implement a little bit of a different style, a little more air raid-ish, 5 wide, maybe something a little different that we're not used to seeing?
Is Godwin good to go for week 1, or is that kind of like up in the air?
Well, he broke his ankle week 4 last year. So he had surgery a really long, I want to say he had surgery by December of last year, maybe November, December-ish. So, I mean, he should be in theory, that's be about 8-9 months by the time, So,
I don't know if I would take a fantasy receiver from the Bucks just because you don't really know what they're going to do there. I mean, Evans is always so consistent with his, same thing as Najee Harris. He always hits 1,000 somehow.
Right.
Did he not this year?
He did. No, he hit it this year. Yeah, because I remember he got in the last game.
17 attempts to try to do it. They targeted this man the last week of the game 7 straight times just to get 1,004 yards from Mike.
Yeah, so he's consistent. But you never know.
Sorry, Jackson. Yeah.
No, you got it.
Cool, guys. And then last but not least, Cody, if we didn't mention any of the losers on your list, who are yours for this year?
Okay. So I got one team and a couple of players. Team-wise, I would probably say the Saints. I like their first pick of Calvin Banks. I thought it was a good pick, but I thought they had I don't know what's going on with Derek Carr, whether he's injured or he doesn't want to be there or what's kind of the scenario there. So I thought, he's just getting old. But I thought they would have perfect opportunity. They've had obviously multiple opportunities to take Shedeur Sanders, and then they take Tyler Shuck, who's got a walker already. I think he's older than Trevor Lawrence and Brock Purdy. A lot of time in college and just not a lot of production. So I didn't really understand that pick. So I don't really know the direction of the Saints going forward. So maybe that's a good thing for you, Jackson, there in your division. That should be maybe a couple of wins. But I don't know what they were doing there. And then I kind of have a quarterback that fell under the radar that really dropped and no one talked about because everyone was talking about Shedeur was Quinn Ewers. Maybe he
Yo,
should have jumped in
uh,
the transfer portal, stayed in college. You get picked in the 7th round. I mean, he's got a chance maybe to start in Miami at some point. Tua always gets hurt, but man, I mean, I know he wasn't going to stay at Texas because they were ready to move on with Arch, but he probably could have got 5 million or 4 million like Carson Beck
he
for
was
some team in
offered that.
NIL.
He was
So
offered
he should have
6,
probably
I'm
stayed in
pretty sure.
college. Yeah.
But I actually think Quinn Ewers in Miami is a great. It sucked that he had to wait to the 7th round and lost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But Quinn Ewers to the Dolphins, because I was kind of hoping for Shedeur to the Dolphins, right? But like Quinn Ewers to the Dolphins is kind of like a cheese move that I think it is like sliding under the radar because he has so much talent. Obviously, he is as brittle as Tua, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but I think he is like he's so toolsy. He has so much like raw ability that I think Mike McDaniel can harness that, and he has a way bigger arm than Tua. So it's like I think it will be a lot of fun if unfortunate circumstances were to happen to Tua again, that he might actually get an opportunity to play, and he might play pretty well.
Right.
Cool, guys. So next time, I remember we were talking in our chats before the show, and I think it was either Cody or Josh that said that we should do like a live reaction while we're watching or listening in or tuning in to the draft. And I think we're gonna do that next time, and that would be really really fun. I think like if all five of us can make it in that time, it's gonna be chaos on the show. Like that's for sure. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I think a lot of reactions. Hopefully, nobody has like a lagging stream or something like that, and then miss it. So that is it for at least talking about the draft. However, we did save one topic for last, and we have a lot of time to talk about this one person. We're talking about the QB from Colorado who was chosen number 144th in the 5th round to the Cleveland Browns, none other than Shedeur Sanders. Okay, so very, very shocking, but is it really? And I'm going to pose this right now because I think during our previous show, we didn't have a show last week because it was Easter. But CJ, if you were tuning in, we had a show about GNT and Sanders and where they were going to go in the draft, right? And we were predicting like, oh, like he's going to go here, he's going to go there. And I kind of mentioned the fact that Sanders was someone that was going to be his authentic self when it came to the interviews and the very few interviews that he had with certain teams. And I honestly think that was one of the reasons why probably he didn't get picked so far ahead amongst other quarterbacks. Because I honestly think that maybe he rubbed people the wrong way. He has a lot, like we were talking about, like, oh, is it confidence? Is it arrogance? Maybe it's a mixture of both. And maybe it wasn't a good fit for many of the teams that were considering him, including the Steelers, which Kilpie and Woodage, who are watching from YouTube, already pointed out. So, guys, let's start with Cody. Cody, do you think my reason is one of the reasons why maybe Shedeur fell to 144 in the 5th round? What do you think about that, or do you have another reason why it could be that way?
Well, that seems to be kind of the rumors, is that
Yeah.
he came off as a little bit arrogant, a little bit cocky in some of the interviews. Like he didn't take a lot of interviews and a lot of visits because he was really only projected to go to a handful of teams. So I think it was
Mm-hmm.
like 5 or 6 at the very most. But there's rumors that him and Brian Dable, like that he didn't have a good interview with the Giants. There was rumors that him and Mike Tomlin got along, but that clearly wasn't the case. He passed on him like 5 or 6 times. So
Yeah.
that was the kind of the consensus, and everybody was saying during the draft, like, hey, like he was coming off as a little bit too arrogant, and like, yeah, he already going into the situation, like his last name and his just name as a whole is always gonna sometimes work for him, and then this time it kind of worked against him a little bit.
Yeah.
So I still was shocked. Like I wasn't shocked that he fell the first round. I kept hearing that was a possibility. But to fall to the 5th round to be the 6th quarterback taken was just, I think, was shocking. Definitely one of the biggest drops, probably obviously the biggest drop of any player of that kind of magnitude ever. But I mean, I'm sitting here with the flag behind me of the Patriots of a guy who was the best player of all time, in my opinion, that dropped to the 6th round. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe he can use this as a motivation for the rest of his career.
Exactly. CJ, why do you think that Sanders fell so far in the draft?
You know, I've been kind of racking my brain about this for the last couple of days. And I think I kind of want to take a different approach here. So, you guys remember the reason why the Hard Knocks offseason kind of got canceled because we got too close of a look at seeing how Brian Daboll like evaluates quarterbacks and how he brings them through the ringer, right? And then, obviously the famous Jaden Daniels clip where he's just like people, think, oh, like make Jaden Daniels look bad, yada yada. But yeah, Jaden Daniels had a great rookie year. And I don't know when the last time Steelers just drafted a really good quarterback. Oh yeah, Ben Roethlisberger. That was like 2004. So been over 20 years. Maybe it's the evaluators that are kind of out of touch with trying to figure out who these young men are, right? And so they have this, pictured perfect, right? Of like they need to fit this mold exactly, but not realizing your mold needs to change based off the talent. And it is a combination of everything, right? It's not a perfect cookie cutter answer for why everything happened. I think it is like Shedeur not having an elite skill, but like really good at a lot of different skills. So then when you want to project, especially when you deem this quarterback class as not as great, you try to find who has like the most tools that you could possibly turn into something and then coach up the rest. Obviously with Tyler Shook, one of the biggest things was obviously he played 7 years, so he's older. He's seen a lot, played in a lot of different systems, had a big arm, the fastest of the second fastest of the quarterbacks. But with his injuries, there were clean breaks with his collarbone and I think his ankle, if I'm not mistaken, or it was collarbone twice. And so there were bone breaks versus ligaments, which is I guess more assuring versus ligament damage. Because they kind of heal a little bit better. So I get that. Jackson Dart has a big arm who can run. Cam Ward has all those tools similar to Shedeur, but he has a little bit more athleticism. So you're seeing you seeing what these guys have, these elite traits, and you see Shedeur is an elite, placement of the football guy, similar to a Bryce Young, who's like a point guard quarterback. People like to use that term. And but I think it's just a mixture of everything that just made a really bad situation this past weekend.
For sure. Josh, what do you think's the real reason why Shedeur dropped so low?
There's always a fine line between confident and cocky. I think it depends on what context. I don't think it was fair because I believe, as a confident person myself, right? I do believe that you should not be casted away because you're a confident person and what abilities you bring to the table and who you are as a person. So I don't think that was fair for him to get the backlash that he did. I don't think it's fair to him. Was I surprised he dropped in the first round? No. Hence, a couple podcasts ago, so that I think they could have fell to the Rams, which kind of far down the draft board. So I wasn't too surprised that he was falling back a little bit. But hearing the things that go and watch the clips that have gone out, like the beef he had low key, I didn't know that he had with Cam Ward. Of like when they were, practicing together and whatnot, they were beefing back and forth, and Shedeur essentially almost calling him Ward trash and whatnot. But Ward was stood his own 10 toes down, try to call him out as well, which is kind of entertaining, I guess you could say. I didn't really expect they had that kind of beef with each other besides trying to fight for the number 1 overall pick. And I think what Cody brought up with a little spat he had with Daboll, the Giants, that supposedly he gave Shedeur some sort of pack or something to prepare for. And so when it was time for him to meet with him, he was not prepared at all. And that kind of pissed him off. Which is like, if you are going to be doing this kind of things, you got to be prepared for like other stories I've heard on previous drafts. When with Jamarcus Russell, somebody, I don't know who, like gave you like a tape or a book to read or whatever. There was like money in it. And if you did your research or whatnot, did the homework and studied film, that you would have found the $100 bill or something in there. But he never did.
You're thinking of draft day, but
yeah.
Jamarcus Russell has a blank
to
tape.
that one word.
The blank tape for Jamarcus Russell. Yeah. Great story though.
Yeah, for sure.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah, and then already the perceived notion of the anonymous coaches, saying that he's not that good or whatnot, and
Mhm.
he's only successful because his the name on the back of the jersey and everything else in between. Yeah, I think that's kind of all the reason why he fell. Did he deserve to fall to the fifth round or whatever? No. Do I think he was a first round talent because of the lack of quarterback
Mm.
competitiveness? Maybe not so much, but I think past the second round, I think was a little obnoxious and not fair to him, regardless. And which kind of extra gut punch. Good thing for him waving it off of that prank phone call he got. Was kind of jacked up. Was it somewhat innocent? Sure, no one was harmed during this, but it's kind of jacked up someone's emotions. That's someone's paycheck on the line. To eventually,
Mhm.
feed their own family, put food on the table at some point. To kind of make a mockery of that's kind of meh. But yeah, that's kind of my take on that.
For sure. And last but not least, Jackson, why do you think that Shedeur fell so far in the draft? And then I'll bring up a few other questions that we can answer about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can go into the hypotheticals about like what happened in those interviews. Now, if they've got videos, I want them. I want them like I want.
Yeah.
I don't care about any of the government files that we're trying to get released. Like I want the Shedeur Sanders
Yep.
interview files above all. But since we don't know what happened there, it can get kind of dicey. Like guessing what happened there, I think you can really bring out some bias when you go with that. So I just think that you can rely on the evidence that was put out there to the public. There's multiple interviews of Dion saying that him and his son are going to pull an Eli Manning if he gets drafted by a
Yeah.
team he doesn't want.
Mhm.
Him and Shiloh saying that they're going to be picky about the team, saying that you need to be ready to change your team and your culture to fit me. These are all things that were said on video that you can go find easily, right? This isn't like you have to be careful saying things about Shedeur and the Sanders family because like people are getting torn apart for their criticisms of this
Mhm.
family.
Yeah.
And those things are readily accessible, and so you can stick with those. And my last kind of point about that is kind of what I alluded to right there by saying that you can kind of get torn apart for making your criticisms. I
Mm.
think that as the media is getting younger and younger and more opinionated, more and more taken over by the flash of like the Sanders family or Travis Hunter and their like social media presence and all that,
Mhm.
we really had this just kind of like one track mind echo chamber around the Sanders family and about what was going on there. And there's been several statements made by NFL GMs since, or NFL personnel since, saying that like essentially everyone either knew and respected or knew and feared Dion, and speaking against him would be like, speaking against the chosen one, the chosen child in Shedeur, like in fear that if they were wrong, they'd be very wrong, right? But the Dion held this just like aggressive confidence that like would lead to like your belittlement if you disagreed with his take
Mhm.
on his son. And this expanded into the media, right? I mean, there were plenty of people that were, they gave their honest takes on Shedeur, which we all have our own takes on how quarterbacks are. And, things like racism were thrown into the mix where they're like, oh, you don't like Shedeur because of, the color of his skin, or you don't like it because of the politics of it. And it became this thing where like you couldn't criticize Shedeur Sanders without, you couldn't be unscathed making a negative
Yeah.
comment about Shedeur. And when you can't freely speak about what you think of a quarterback just based on his play on the field, it becomes really hard to analyze that. And if
Mhm.
there's anything that NFL owners and GMs are not afraid of, it's that, right? We've had some pretty questionable owners, GMs, staffers in the past that like are not afraid to say things that are not agreeable. And so I think that they probably made their honest analysis and they were free from this like kind of media conundrum that you couldn't speak out against Shador, and
Mhm.
it led to an aggressive slide. I don't think that he should have fallen that far,
Yeah.
but I just don't think that if people were able to speak freely about Shador from the start, I don't know if he ever would have been mocked to go number one overall like he was in like March. You know, I think that it's just kind of a sad product of like this like bully ball type of media portrayal of Shador, in that if you spoke negatively, if you didn't like, if you didn't like his attitude, or if you didn't like how his
Mm,
dad was running his business, or if you didn't like, the flexing of the watch or whatever, like, it said something about you as a person and your biases and your prejudices. And, that it became impossible to give your own kind of opinion on it. And I never even held those opinions. I like Shedeur. I
mhm.
like a confident quarterback. I want someone who believes in their abilities. I just also like when people are able to share how they feel about a quarterback, and it didn't really feel like it was that way.
Yeah, speaking of which, what Jackson talked about in terms of play on the field, I heard that maybe one of the reasons also that he fell so far down the list is because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, did he not play in the Senior Bowl and did he not throw at the combine? I feel like those
No.
Yeah,
two
he
exactly.
didn't participate
So
in either. Yeah.
exactly. So I think those, including the fact that maybe his interviews didn't go 100% well, maybe that might be the reason. But let's talk about what happens now. So now he's on the Browns. The Browns, they already drafted a quarterback 50 spots higher in Dylan Gabriel. And then they have Flacco, then they have Pickett. So you
Right.
have two of the starting ish quarterbacks going at it, and then you have the rookie quarterbacks going at it for backup. And then one of them is probably going to get cut. Who's that going to be? I'm going to start with CJ first. Do you have an inclination here?
Yeah, I can actually look into my crystal ball. I can tell you exactly what's going to happen here in Cleveland. I mean, the thing is, I think, to be honest, right? The two teams that are really proactive of looking at next year's quarterback class, aka Arch Manning, are
Mm,
A, the Cleveland Browns, and B, the Los Angeles Rams. Okay, so they both acquired a second first round pick just so they
yeah.
can have maneuver. And the Saints might just stink enough with their quarterback crop to where they can just have them bring home back to New Orleans, which would be a perfect fit for them, right?
Hmm.
Um, Kenny Pickett is on a league minimum contract. That's cuttable.
Hmm.
Uh, Joe Flacco signed for $4 million. That's cuttable. Dylan Gabriel's is on a rookie contract for the third round. That's $1 million, $2 million a year. That's
Hmm.
cuttable. Same for Shedeur. You know, it's not cuttable, Deshaun Watson's contract, because they're in cap hell for the next couple of years, right? So they have fluidity to be able to just say, you know, what the hell, go at it. So there is a little bit more parity between all four of these quarterbacks. Like, I think with Joe Flacco being 40, I think he takes less reps. He does know the offense. He can perform well in this offense. What you really want to see with these four quarterbacks is, does Kenny Pickett have something left in the tank? Is he like,
Josh is
did
like,
he make
no.
a big step under in Philadelphia to now he gets opportunity, right? This is like the Mitchell Trubisky time when he was with the Steelers to see if he can actually do it. And so this is his redemption arc for Kenny Pickett, right? But now we're taking a flyer on these two young quarterbacks with Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders to see, okay, is there something with these guys? Are these going to be perennial backups, right? Dylan Gabriel, everyone's, loves his rocking arm, his mobility, but the only thing, the biggest knock on him, he is shorter than Kyler Murray, right? He's just a short quarterback. He's not shorter than Kyler Murray. Nobody is, except for Bryce. But then it was Shedeur, obviously touted as being possibly one of the top two quarterbacks in this draft, a potential first round quarterback. How much, how many opportunities will he actually get that are fair? Because you only have so many reps, right? So it's gonna be even playing ground, but like Kenny Pickett will get, especially and trading for him, he will probably get the bulk of the opportunities early on to see what he can do. And then from there, it's probably going to go Kenny, Dylan, Shedeur, and then Flacco. Because you don't
What,
want Flacco to start for you. Like, you legitimately don't want Flacco to start for you. That's like, hey, I guess we got to, right? So in theory, you want Kenny Pickett, who's still 20-ish, 26, maybe 27. And then you want Shedeur or Dylan Gabriel to be decent for you. for the next couple years, and then you can just have that extra first round pick next year to just continue to add weapons to your team. So that's where I look at the pecking order going in.
What is Deshaun's injury timeline?
He's not
He
coming
Yeah.
back.
re-injured that, so he went back in
tore
and
his
got surgery.
Achilles,
Yeah.
Yeah,
which is really hard to do.
yeah. I think he's out for. I don't think he's playing in 2025.
No, he's not.
I
He's
don't-
already out for 2025.
Yeah.
Damn.
Like, because what the issue was, he was supposed to be wearing his boot, but obviously, everyone's going to point to the video of him dancing with his fiance or wife, where he's like without the boot on, like so close since he had surgery in Charlotte. Then it's like, then he re-tears it, like close to that video coming out. Then it's like, it's so hard to like re-tear your Achilles, like same Achilles that soon because of like whatever medical stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Josh next because he was shaking his head so hard when it came to talking about Pickett. So, what do you think is gonna happen? Like CJ kind of broke it down pretty well, I would think. So, like, what's your vision for what's gonna happen with the Browns quarterback situation?
One, I just kind of hate Pickett just in general. I've just seen that one play in college where he pretended to slide and got it back up and kept running a touchdown and act like it was all hot after that. Oh, that was years. The defense is a dude and whatnot. I'm like, smack him in the mouth next time we see him. I don't care if he goes down or not, but that's a whole different rabbit hole. That's why I shook my head. I do not like that guy. Otherwise, I don't know. I kind of feel like how that goes down. I think they'll keep Flacco around because he's just a classy veteran who shuts up, just gets the job done, doesn't mind holding the fort, doesn't mind also holding the clipboard. He don't care either way. He just nice, comfortable paycheck and just does what he has to do. I kind of look at him as like the big brother that the parents asked to babysit, which in this case is going to be Sanders and Gabriel. So while the parents go out and have a date night, asking Flacco to watch the younger brothers, whatnot, but looks over his shoulder and they're just fighting each other in the backyard and whatnot. In this case, is who's going to fight for the scraps of, when the parents' approval of, who's going to be the next QB up and between Gabriel and Sanders, because I think go either way, to be honest. They both have their own skill sets and what they brought to the programs, what made them successful enough to get drafted, in my opinion. With Watson, he's just kind of like that redheaded stepchild that they put in the attic. It's kind of over with, just in general. I think so. Ready to look past him in the future, and Flacco hold down the fort until he's ready to be dethroned, which I don't think will take that long.
Yeah, that's
we'll
fair.
see how that goes.
That's fair. And then Jackson, what do you think's gonna happen then with this whole quarterback situation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you don't have to factor Deshaun into this. They'll put him on the IR and like he won't take up a roster spot. So I would imagine they go with a 3-man QB room, 4 as a crowd with a 53-man roster. Like you need other positions accounted for. So it really depends on training camp, but I could see it being the 2 rookies and Kenny Pickett, which I know doesn't make a ton of sense because Kenny hasn't really proven himself all that much. But you're getting the cheapest 3-man quarterback room you could possibly have. With Joe Flacco kind of being a guy that they're holding on to. He's done some great work holding down the fort, but that was now like 2 years ago. His performance last year was not living up to that. He's clearly aged out of NFL contention. He's around because people are still willing to pay him. Which
it's like Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I support it. If I was 42 and people were still wanting to pay me $4 million to throw a football, I'd play until they were breaking my bones. So yeah, I mean, I think that they probably, if Kenny at all outplays Flacco, they let Flacco go. Flacco could be someone to watch as a team needs a quarterback down the stretch in the season. Maybe the Steelers, if they can't get something, some sort of deal going with Rodgers. Not to put on my tin hat, but yeah, I'd say it's the 3 youngest guys. They roll with that, and they kind of have this like F it mentality right now that like if we do bad enough, we'll have a good draft pick next year. They didn't do enough in the draft to like change how they are as contenders. I maybe the analysis of Shedeur a couple months ago was correct. Maybe he shines. Maybe he's a good rookie quarterback, and they have a good team. I think that they still probably believe in him. They wouldn't have drafted him otherwise. So yeah, I could honestly see it shaking out to where Shedeur plays a decent amount of the season with someone like Kenny Pickett or Joe Flacco starting it, depending on who outplays who in training camp.
Okay, and last one. Oh, go ahead, CJ.
Sorry. One thing too, I think we kind of gloss over is the Browns traded back up to get Shedeur because there was rumors that the Philadelphia Eagles were going to draft him at that spot because they traded just over the Philadelphia Eagles to come get Shedeur. So it's like that just seems so dumb. You traded up to go get him. Like obviously everyone was predicting the week of is you get Travis Hunter at 2 and you trade up, or at 33 you get Shedeur.
Yep.
Perfect world, right? Or maybe at the not 33 but 35, right? Because you could have got Judkins and then you got Shedeur. You didn't need to get Dylan Sampson, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't know the thing about too. Are they trying to do like a Redskins 2.0 of Robert Griffin Jr. and then Kirk Cousins kind of concept? One of these guys is bound to work. If one fails, we got another backup.
Well, one was the coach's pick and one was the owner's pick. So if that's similar to what happened in Cleveland, it's a possibility because Haslam is not a great owner. So
that's a topic for another day. But last but not least, Cody, what do you think is going to happen with this quarterback situation before we wrap it up for this week?
Okay. Yeah, I kind of echo what everybody else is saying a little bit, but I mean, I think ideal situation for the Browns is Gabriel and Shedeur emerge as the top 2 quarterbacks, and you can kind of move forward with those two. I think Flacco probably will be the odd man out. Just he's 40, not really paying him a ton, and his performance 2 years ago was really good, but in Indianapolis last year it wasn't very good. So he probably 2 years ago was probably his peak at this time of his career, but I mean, if you're Shedeur Sanders, I know that was probably like 3 of the longest days of your life, but you end up in a situation where you could be the starter, maybe not week 1, but somewhere in the season. So it's not as bad as it could have been. Like you could have, maybe he gets drafted by the Eagles. And you're a backup. Like you're not going to start over Jalen Hurts. So the situation isn't as bad as it could have been.
For sure,
I would love to have been a Philadelphia Eagle.
Yeah, you can win Super Bowls, but you're going to hold a clipboard your whole life. Yep.
Well, that's what they said about
you saw what happened with
Jalen
Jalen Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts outplayed. I mean, they just decided to go with him after they were like, oh, maybe Carson Wentz is really not that guy. And then you just ball out in practice. You get to just get to know AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and all these guys. And like, man, this guy's kind of good. And then it's like, you know what? Maybe we can get something for Jalen. Save our cap space. I
think the locker room wasn't behind Carson Wentz, so I think that's why that happened. Where it's like the locker room's for sure behind Jalen Hurts.
I don't know.
It'd be hard.
AJ Brown's
it'd be hard to me. Well, AJ Brown, if just depends on the time you talk to him. So I think his mood changes from hour to hour. So you just
what is the Inner Excellence or whatever this book
He's changed. He bought a book.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight on From the Sidelines. We covered our winners and losers, as well as talk about Shedeur Sanders and why he slipped so low onto this year's draft. Next week, we'll be back always at 8 p.m. Eastern on From the Sidelines, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. And we will see you guys later. Have a good night.
Peace.
Oh, Canada. Put on a suit. Drink water. Don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.